So here's the next generation sneaker that's going to make us market leader.
Did we hit our weight and spring target?
Absolutely. This shoe blows the competition out of the water.
Great. Sign the wrapper?
We're close. Just finalizing the royalties.
What about the carbon footprint?
It's non-marking, Kathy.
I'm talking climate impact, Kevin.
I know, but who cares?
25 billion pairs a year, globally, have a combined impact like France. And oh, by the way, focus groups tell us that our target market cares.
Kevin, you factored this in, right? How does this shoe compare to the competition? What do we need to optimize to be the low-carbon leader?
Well, we can't manage what we don't measure. We'd have to calculate carbon at every step in the value chain, from raw material mining to end of use. It's like cost accounting.
Seriously? Who's going to go to all that trouble?
The future market leader.
SAP Product Carbon Footprint Analytics. Measure what matters.
Welcome to the Green Live episode 10. It's a great pleasure to have you here today. And as usual, we have a great conversation about sustainability. Nearly 1 hour with some of the best experts that can share the learnings with you. And I will welcome everybody here today. Adriana, Carlos, and Estamatia, welcome once again.
Hello.
Hello, Pedro.
Hi, Pedro.
Wonderful. Well, today the topic is sustainable travel and transportation. And I'm sure this is going to touch the hearts of several people, maybe because you want to travel or because you're missing travel. But let's look into travel with the angle of sustainability. Adriana, can you introduce us to the topic?
Sure, Pedro. Thank you very much. So I have chosen this topic. I'll start. So sustainability is a particularly important issue for the transportation sector. And well, it's already well known that actually CO2 is mostly emitted by fossil fuels. And it seems that 14% comes from fossil fuels burned for road, rail, air, and marine transportation. And almost 95% of the world's transportation energy, by the way, it's coming from petroleum-based fuels, largely gasoline and diesel. As far as it regards the European Union, it seems that transport currently accounts for a quarter of the greenhouse gas emissions. And this figure continues to rise, of course, as demand grows. But the European Green Deal is seeking to reduce that by at least 90% by 2050. So this means that we need to move to more sustainable transport, and this means putting users first and providing them with more affordable, more accessible, healthier, and cleaner alternatives. Today, we will touch the sustainability topic for a few sub-industries of travel and transportation, because there are lots of there in there. We will touch airlines, rail, public transportation, trucks, and shipping. Of course, there's a lot to say. Therefore, given the time and the many sub-industries to touch, it's going to be a really light touch. Of course, we can always deep dive whenever we see interest from you, which you are our listeners. Yeah, so please ask questions, comments. Let us know what are your thoughts on it. So let me start now with airlines and rail, and mainly passenger transportation, but also a little bit of cargo. Of course, as you might imagine, COVID-19 has really hit hard these industries, and passenger transportation dropped really a lot. We have seen that, for example, in countries like Ireland, it dropped like for 94%, like almost zero transportation by rail. In France, Spain, and Luxembourg, it dropped by 78%. In Italy, by 77%. Really hard hit. But this also impacted a lot of jobs. As you can imagine, in aviation, for example, we are expecting a fall by 46 million. This is almost 52% of these jobs. So the situation is not pink, as you might imagine. However, there is a good point in this as well, because, of course, reducing all this travel has brought also a drop in the greenhouse gas emissions. And it seems that they plunged by roughly 2.4 billion tons in 2020, which is basically a 7% drop from the 2019. It is actually the largest decline that we have on record, which is triggered by worldwide COVID-19 restrictions all over the world. US dropped by 12%, while the European Union by 11%, while, for example, China only 1.7 because they had just different politics around that. Yeah, so we have seen some nasty numbers regarding COVID-19, which can be bad, which can be good, but if we can look at it from a climate change perspective, this is not enough because this effect will not have a lasting effect on climate change unless countries really incorporate green policy measures in their economy recovery packages. So of course there are lots of recovery plans going on. So we need to make sure that we incorporate actions which brings these companies to be more sustainable. So let's look a little bit at airlines and rail right now. As you might imagine, rail is definitely much more sustainable than airline. Well, simply because rail is using for years now electricity and not fossil fuels. Yeah, I know most of the countries we have already moved away from fossil fuels, while airlines are still largely basically using fossil fuels. So this is already a big contributor. So what can you do in this way? So rail is like 4 or 5 times less carbon emissions intensive than airline. But we cannot remove airlines, of course. The companies are there, the jobs are there. We need that. We need long haul distances. But let's look also at multimodal transport. Yeah, we can combine rail and airlines. So why not travel for short distances with rail, with train, and use the airlines for long haul distances? By the way, this is also more efficient for the companies and more profitable. So it could benefit both. Of course, then maybe things could get a bit more complex. So we need to combine offerings for the consumers with train tickets and with airline tickets. This would mean an effort for companies, of course, to design this kind of offers, to deliver it, to sell it, and also to bill it and get the revenue out of it, which is not an easy task, by the way, if you look at the global level or even at the regional level. And of course, we have at SAP, we have solutions that can help in this area of promoting these kind of solutions, like, for example, billing and revenue innovation management, and not only. By the way, it is also very important when doing such initiatives to have a look at what consumers think about it. How do they feel? Are they aware of this? Showing our carbon footprint is very important.
And Adriana, just one
Yes.
comment on the solution side. Many of our customers are struggling to measure Scope 3 emissions. And inside those Scope 3 emissions, we have the traveling and the commuting of the employees. So that is something that we have embedded in Concur. The Concur tells you first, for starters, it tells you how much CO2 you're emitting with your transportation method, whatever it is. But then it proposes you an alternative. If you're going to do a short haul, it proposes you a train. So it not only educates people, it gives alternatives. It helps the company creating and offsetting all those emissions, and finally, it helps the company reporting Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions. So that's another very useful thing, because what we are seeing as we visit more and more customers is that they are very good at reporting Scope 1 and 2, but Scope 3 is huge. So that's a great place to start.
Yes, thank you, Carlos. Very good comments. I was actually getting to that. Concur. I'm not sure if all of you heard Carlos very well. For me, it's a bit. It was not that the best quality. So maybe I can just resume a little bit. So Concur has options for giving the consumer transparency as far as it regards CO2 carbon footprint when they're planning the traveling, raising their awareness, and also helping the companies to reduce their business traveling CO2 emissions, which get into the Scope 3 emissions. Of course, for rails and airlines, it's usually very easy to measure the carbon footprint of a specific traveling. For example, for rail, I can see that for many years now, they have on the ticket what's the carbon footprint of my travel. And also for airlines, it's very easy to calculate. But Scope 3 emissions is not that easy to calculate for airlines, rail, or even other industries. So looking at business travel, but not only other things like purchased goods, like what is the end life of our products, what's happening with the train after it's not used anymore, what happens with the plane after it's not used anymore, is there a second life for it, is there a way to use the spare parts and so on, how do we recycle that? There are lots of topics to touch there. So it's measuring, it's also how we can improve that and make it more efficient. We can also go into topics like how can we make maintenance more efficient. Of course, for airlines, we know that the maintenance is very well regulated and they need to do periodic maintenance. But for example, for railways, it's a bit easier because they can move away from this traditional periodical maintenance and look more into maintenance which is directly connected with the situation that they need to handle. Like, for example, they can create a digital twin of the trains and see whenever something happens which might need attention, and they do the maintenance on the spot depending on this. This helps a lot to reduce also cost, of course, not only to be more sustainable. Thank you for that comment. By the way, coming back now to the consumers and how much they care about the carbon footprint, we have done a study in Europe to understand how aware are they, but also how open are they to switch between airline and train. For example, we asked our consumers, are you willing to move from a 1 hour trip with a plane to a 4 hour trip with a train, but emit 4 times less carbon to emissions? And actually, we're surprised to see that 70% of them are really they are really okay with moving to a train alternative if they would know their carbon footprint. Of course, there is also the 30% who is not willing to do that, but 70% is already a very good number. This means that they care, there is an opportunity there, and we can do that. As far as it regards rails, let's see how else we can improve it. Of course, we already said that it's already pretty sustainable, but we can improve further by looking in the energy efficiency area. So making the best use of the energy that the train is using. We are helping our customers here not only with the maintenance part, but also to measure their efficiency, understand whenever they have high peaks of energy use and how can they improve that, and also avoid any potential issues around that. Looking now at airlines, we have to say that there are, there has been a lot of things going on in Europe. I'm talking about especially since starting 2004, we moved from intergovernmental policies to a EU framework, which means that the EU has now a word to say in how we handle air transportation in Europe. And they have created plans for how to approach that and how to be more sustainable in this area. So there are basically three main actions that they have taken. This is the research and development for greener technology, modernizing air traffic management system, and market-based measures. As far as it regards the greener technology, as you can imagine, of course, we are looking on how we can reduce the fuel consumption, therefore also the CO2 emissions, how we can reduce the onboard hydrocarbons, alongside also with pursuing significant noise reductions, because noise is also a problem with the airlines. As far as it regards the air traffic management system, the European Union has implemented the Single European Sky legislation, which actually reforms the way air traffic management is organized. And they are really working on how we can use better the traffic management systems and reduce the emissions by 10% per flight, which is pretty good, by the way. So lots of things going on in both industries. Of course, COVID hit really hard all of us, and we need to ensure resilience mostly in the years to come. But we have an opportunity now with all the recovery plans to ensure that these companies are going to be more sustainable, and we're going to travel in a more sustainable way, because climate change, like we always said, it's here to stay for many years, and pandemic, we hope that is going to be finished in maybe this year. So let's see now how we can also improve in to public transportation, because that's also a great option, but also what we can do on a more business point of view, let's say by using tracks, for example, for cargo. Can you enlighten us a little bit here, Carlos?
Sure, but let me just confirm that you can hear me well.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, the first thing I would like to go back to our chemistry classes and understand why planes and trucks and cars emit so much CO2. For example, if I am loading a liter of gas in my car, how come it can emit tons of CO2 after a while? And the reason is that the carbon that is in that gas combines with the oxygen in the atmosphere, and the oxygen is let's say more than twice heavier, more than twice than carbon. So the carbon plus the oxygen creates the CO2. And that's why every time we load 1 ton of gas, we're generating nearly 4 tons of CO2. Just to go back to your chemistry classes. But now let's start with a success story, and this is in China, in Shenzhen. They took 16,000 little buses, and they completely electrified the fleet of the city. They did the same with taxis. 2/3 of the taxis are now electric. So this is a huge accomplishment, and this tells us that this can be done, and it can be done at scale. And the reason that they can electrify this public transportation is because it's the ideal situation. Those buses are not very heavy. The distances that they do are not very, very big, and they stand still during the night to be recharged. So that's a perfect scenario. As you can imagine, this is the opposite when we talk about trucks, because trucks carry a load, so it's very heavy. They have to travel long distances, and they are not standing still at night. So it is not something that we can do with trucks and freight transportation. Now, this is not the only story. For small cities, for example, UPS has now more than electric trucks delivering small cargo inside the city, so that can also be achieved. And don't forget, let's not forget, talking about public transportation, that the trains are electric. They, in the majority, they have always been electric. Okay, so that's a step that we don't have to take. Now, what can we do? Of course, let's also remember that 99.9% of the history of humanity, we didn't rely on fossil fuels. Okay, we walked, we biked, we were on the back of animals. So it is just recently that we are so used to these fossil fuels. But definitely, using less transportation or using public transportation is the low-hanging fruit. But we don't have to stop there. Okay, we have the second step to take is to share the infrastructure, and that's exactly what we do in public transportation, and that is also what we do in car sharing. So if you're thinking to change your car and buy an electric one, don't do it. Continue using your car. That's the best way to do. Continue using it for many, many years, even if the mileage is not very good. That's a greener thing that you can do. And when you cannot do it anymore, of course, do car sharing. Just to give you a number, if the household changes 1/5 of the household income from buying to renting, we will be cutting 2% our CO2 emissions. But what else can we do? Of course, when we see a truck on the road, we want to make sure that it goes fully loaded and it comes back fully loaded. And that's something that in the majority of the cases doesn't happen. And this is the reason, one of the reasons why SAP with the logistics business network makes sure that those trucks go full and come back full. And the usage of that truck and that fuel and the emissions are maximized. And it's also a way to reduce the costs of the owner of the truck. So increase the margin and the benefit. And this is the beautiful thing when we find the sustainability advantage. So sustainability to spend less and sustainability to make more money. This is the spirit of the SAP Logistics Business Network. Now we have to recognize that technology has been the enabler of all this, the electrification of cars, the IoT, the platforms to be able to do car sharing or truck sharing. By the way, the product as a service is not only in the car industry, it's also here in the truck industry. And all those technologies, for example, the telematics, controlling the emission of the trucks, or giving recommendations for the car drivers to inflate their tires, or to slow down, or to not brake so abruptly. All those small differences make a contribution to the reduction that we have to do. Just think that there are other yes.
Yeah. Now that you are talking about technologies, I would like to ask you if you have heard about what Elon Musk is creating at the moment, the Hyperloop concept.
I've heard about it, but tell us.
Okay, so this is a future technology where it will be ready almost in 10 years. And a train is being created with the usage of a magnet. And it's being run in a long vacuum tubes, and they estimate that a travel that it is let's say 10 hours travel, it will be reduced to 45 minutes, and this is something that is coming.
And you know, when we didn't have trains, we had to install the railroads. When we didn't have cars, we had to install the roads. And now new innovations probably need a new infrastructure to be delivered, that the one you mentioned. And it's not the only innovation, Stamatia. There are more innovations that are going to also help us get into our carbon neutral transportation system. One of them is the second generation's biofuels. Today we have biofuels, but mostly coming from crops that we also eat. So we use a lot of fertilizer, a lot of nitrous oxygen is created, which also, so these second generation biofuels are also a promise. Definitely technology will help. Technological solutions like the one we were discussing about the logistics business network will help, but also our behavior will help. So I will hand it over to you so you give us a little bit more insights on shipping.
Of course. So shipping and ports historically were operated with limited environmental restrictions until the 1960s, when oil bolt created widespread pollution into the seas and also caused the death of a lot of birds, fishes, and plants. And then in that decade, it was when the regulations took place for the shipping company. But it's the shipping company is not the only one that pollutes the oceans. We can see that vast amounts of wastes finds their way into the sea that are coming from the agriculture, from the from the fishing industry, plastics that comes from the manufacturing industry. So it's not only that sector that pollutes, but nevertheless, it has a big impact into the environment. the main impact it is on the greenhouse gas emissions, the water that comes out of the vessel, the ballast water that comes out from the boats, the breaking down of the boats and the recycling methods that the shipping industries are using. And also we have the noise pollution, some garbage that comes out from the bulk cargo, and also chemicals that comes out from the boat. But I would like to share some information about the three first: the greenhouse gas emissions, the ballast water, and the breakdown of the ships. They say that the 15 biggest vessels emit the same quantity of greenhouse gas emissions as all the cars of the world. This is a huge number. Also, according to the International Maritime Organization, IMO, approximately 940 million tons are emitted from the shipping industry. Also, the industry is responsible for the 2.75% of the global greenhouse gas emissions and the 13% of the greenhouse gas emissions that comes from the transportation industry. So those numbers, as we can see, are big. And and they say that if the industry continues to work as a business as usual, they will manage to increase the greenhouse gas emissions to 50%, from 50% to 250% till the year of 2050. So the IMO has the target to reduce the greenhouse gas to 50% till 250 in comparison to 208. So a lot of numbers here to remember.
Yes, I was meeting. Yes, go ahead, Pedro.
No, just want to make the point here. We got a comment from Micaela. She's watching us. Thank you, Micaela, for watching, and she's actually subscribing to this point, right? Good topic, and one that nobody in trade and transport can ignore anymore. And I think all of you have given a lot of data points to just make it substantial. So, Carlos, what do you think?
Yeah, I was coincidentally, I was meeting a customer yesterday. They produce ships. They manufacture ships. And one of the problems or the challenges that they have is that they don't know exactly what is their carbon footprint. It is easier to know how much fuel a ship is using when it's navigating, but it's very hard for them to know what is the CO2 footprint when they are acquiring raw materials or in the downstream operations until the ship goes to the wreck yard. So that's the first thing. If you wanna fix something, you need to measure it. I think the video with which we started this session today, it's testament of that. This industry needs to start measuring upstream, downstream, scope 1, 2, and 3. How do you see this, Tamatia?
Yeah, of course they should start measuring, and already the European Commission has established a strategy for the shipping companies to monitor, report, and verify MRV. So all the shipping companies till end of April, they should submit a report about the CO2 emissions. And on the other side, the European Commission is also producing a report of the CO2 emissions of the industry. But in SAP, we have a number of solutions that we can help in that direction, where the companies can assess the CO2 footprint of the products. They can compare the assessments with other companies, and they can also integrate the ESG rating into the portfolio. And now that the EU taxonomy is coming, this is it's here actually. It's not coming. With the EU taxonomy, it could be really helpful for the companies.
Yeah. So those solutions, PAPM in particular, helps them gathering all that data, managing all that complexity, and being ready for different regulations. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about an ISO 14,000 or you're talking about the European taxonomy that you mentioned, or future regulations. It gives you the flexibility to do something that is also very common in this greenhouse gas emissions tracking, which is projecting and creating the scenarios. What is going to happen in 2 years? What is going to happen in 3 years? Which are the actions that I can take today? How they're going to affect the future? And last but not least, mix the sustainability information with the financial information to really control the triple bottom line.
Yes. So I just wanted to share some information now about the way the ships are being recycled. Are you aware of the beaching, Carlos, or anyone else?
No, what is it?
Okay, so it's really interesting to hear about that, right? So as the goods that the ships are transporting are becoming wastes, in the same way the ship itself, it becomes waste when it reaches the end of life. So instead of abandon the ship, it's better to recycle the ships. It's more environmental, as we can use the different useful resources like aluminium, steel, iron, and plastic. Till 1970s, the companies were using the European and US yards, let's say, and where the ship could go, break down, and then recycle the parts. The thing is that some social and environmental law, after some social and environmental law that was put in those countries, the shipping companies shift to countries with weaker laws. And so now the 70% of the breaking down and the recycling of the shipping is being done in three beaches: in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, and in India. The issue is that in those areas, the recycling methods are not either clean or safe. A lot of workers are losing their life. They are being exposed to toxic incidents, and also they get injured a lot. Except from that, all the toxics that comes out from the boats are contaminating the coasts of those three beaches and also the water. And you can imagine that as thousands of vessels get rid of every year. So you can, and if from those thousands, the 70% are going into those beaches, this is really a big impact into the environment. There are some laws.
Yeah. Great comments, Tamatia here. Sorry for interrupting. I think, Europe wants to be the first carbon neutral continent, but like you said, we need to make sure that we're not exporting that to other continents. So, good comment.
Yes, and in spite there are some laws to prevent that. The companies, they always find way, to ship their ships there. So as to get rid of them.
Yeah, other efforts that this industry is making to be cleaner is on hydrogen as a new fuel. Also on how they tackle the power of wind at the sea. So there are different roads that they are exploring. Now they have the mandate to invest 5, 6, 7% of their revenues in research and development. We sometimes don't realize we're in an industry that is the software industry at SAP that is very heavy in terms of what percentage of our revenues we invest in research and development. Is part of our DNA, and it's now also part of the DNA of these companies that at the same time are producing chips and investigating and researching in how to use hydrogen. So it's something that is very, very good and promising.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think, Mattia, you had another topic, right, around water ballast?
So I just wanted to mention that, and it is an addition actually to what we are discussing, and it goes not only for the shipping industry, but it goes in all the industries. Actually, it's and we have also mentioned in the past a lot of times, it's important for the companies to move from a linear to a circular model where everything will be in use and nothing will be wasted. And we have referred to already to the 5 principles of the circular economy, and I will refer to them now very quickly. It is the responsible design a product that will last over a year. Responsible resources, pick the recycle materials. Responsible production, use the real-time technology so as not to impact the environment while producing. Responsible consumption and recycling. Those 5 principles are very important for the industries. And of course, we at SAP, we have a lot of solutions so as to help the companies either to track the CO2 footprints or to, for example, I hear a noise. Sorry.
We can hear you well, Samatia.
Okay, that's good. And so as to, we have a lot of solutions, the one that we have already referred to, SAP Profitability and Performance Management, but we also have the green token one, so that it creates accountability, traceability, and transparency of the raw materials across the entire supply chain. And also some products in SAP Ariba, our global network, where we have a marketplace to expand the range of recycled plastics and plastic alternatives.
Yeah, and that's important for the producers of trucks, ships, planes. If you can really understand what is the footprint of your raw materials, then you can have a better view of your Scope 3 emissions. And that's something that you can enable through Ariba, of course. Good point.
Wonderful. That's a great topic, and I think transportation might take hours for us just to cover the full extent of it. So what else is missing? How else we can make these industries sustainable?
Well, we talk a lot about new energy sources, the second generation biofuels, the electrification of nearly all those transportation methods. But we need to think again, going back to our, in this case, to our physics class, that 1 kilo of gas has 35 times more energy than 1 battery of lithium. Kilo by kilo, it is incomparable. So it is so attractive to use fossil fuels to move very heavy things that it will be impossible just to suppress fossil fuels, okay? And that's why this plethora of solutions, using less, sharing more, creating other alternative fuels, using different means of transportation, they all need to be combined, also including exploring nuclear to move around, like already exists in some submarines or even some big ships. So we don't have to be afraid of exploring all those arenas, because we are trying to substitute fossil fuels, which are incredibly rich in energy.
And also very cheap. I think one of the things that's going to be a great deal to kind of replace that is the price, right? Creating energy from fossil fuel is very cheap. So we need really big innovation to democratize all the other cleaner sources for that.
Definitely, and that we need also the help of governments and legislators to stop subsidizing those fossil fuels and start injecting money in research and development for all these technologies to mature and to be widely available for whoever wants to invent new things.
Wonderful. Any
Yeah,
further comments?
incentives are very important. They incentive. We should, of course, not support these fossil fuels, but also incentivize the most efficient ones, like electrical cars and so on. I think we have a question from Micaela Fiorito. Thank you, Micaela. Okay, to Carlos. Great point made by Carlos regarding the ideal scenario for electrifying fleets. I'm thinking that though the maritime sector would have no hope to hit their carbonization goals, do you know any best practice in the maritime sector?
Yeah, so they are working a lot in this circular economy. They're investigating on wind in the sea. They're looking at, as I mentioned, the hydrogen to do clean propulsion for the ships. They are also making their moves smarter. So we always think about, for example, I mentioned trucks. They go fully loaded and they come back fully loaded. Something similar happens with ships. They are not always fully loaded. So with better logistics management systems, we could make sure that every time they travel for a good reason, for a full load. And then, of course, how those ships impact the sea when they are at sea. And that has to do with something that Stamatia mentioned, is this circular economy starts in the responsible design. How heavy is that ship? What materials do I use? How can I increase floatability? How can I decrease the mileage? Let's call it that way, etc., etc. So I think they're doing good inroads. I agree. It's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to achieve the carbon neutrality, but they will always be able to offset their emissions. For example, with the customer that I was yesterday, they have a very beautiful plan. They call it the green, something like the green forests. So everywhere they have an operations, they are putting together, or they are financing to plant a big forest to offset their emissions.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Great. All right, guys. So I see a trend here. We've been covering several industries, and what we realize from all those industries is that there is so much to go. And there is a huge ambition ahead of us in terms of reducing carbon emissions to zero. I don't even want to think about the milestone of 50% reduction. I want to think of the zero emissions, which should come in the future. The thing is, how it is the scenario where we don't achieve that. So what society could do. And in the lights of that, maybe we can think of future sessions that we can cover scenarios where what if we don't do enough? What happens? And what is the plan? So what you have thought for future sessions that we can combine with this idea?
Thank you, Pedro. Very good idea.
Yeah,
Please,
that's
Carlos.
the world of adaptation. That's the world of adaptation. And by the way, another sector, because we have people from Greece, from Spain, from Italy, from Dubai. So all these are very touristic destinations, and it will be also very necessary, on top of talking about adaptation, also understand how the touristic sector can, and what they can do to be greener.
Wonderful.
Nice.
So what's going to be the next one, guys?
So let's take it to climate change adaptation. I think these scenarios are really interesting. Let's see what else we can do in case we're not going to make it. Plan B.
Indeed.
By the way, just a
It could
comment
be a
here.
plan A for now.
Just a comment here. I was just checking the EU taxonomy and everything they have in there. And it's not only about climate change action, it's also about climate change adaptation, which can even be about how to be more resilient to floods, droughts, whatever things can happen in the world, and even why not pandemics.
Absolutely.
Very good point.
All right, guys. So we have run 10 episodes of the Green Live. And as you can see, we are growing and growing in knowledge and also in care, right? We talk about SAP cares. And beyond just a climate action and response from SAP, this is becoming our personal care about all these environmental and social impact that is happening. And to be fair, every day I'm growing stronger in my passion for the subject. I'm learning more, and everything that you're doing here to share your knowledge is very, very much appreciated. We have received a lot of good feedback. So after 10 episodes, I have to say, great job. And I just wish for us to continue sharing and growing in the knowledge of a sustainable impact that we need to have in organizations out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
A
you.
lot. Thanks to the audience.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. So I'll leave you with the invitation for our upcoming Sustainability Summit in April. And if you watch this and you want to participate, please just leave your comment below. We will help you with the registration. And for now, check this announcement of the Global Sustainability Summit. Thank you, and I see you next week.
Bye.